It is Two Pros and a Cup of Joe here on Fox Sports Radio. LaVar Arrington, Brady Quinn, Jonas Knox with you. And right now it is time for some breaking news.
Breaking news from Fox Sports.
According to Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network, the Giants are benching quarterback Daniel Jones. They are officially moving on from their starter. So out of the bye week, Rappaport says with the team 2-8, Daniel Jones is now heading to the bench. And the team said it would be a football decision, but nonetheless, it looks like Drew Lock will now be your starting quarterback for the New York Giants. And the Daniel Jones era seems like it's coming to an end there for the New York Giants.
Do y'all like the move with Lock?
So let me just give you some behind the scenes on this. The Giants general manager, Joe Schoen, was in Boulder this past weekend. So they've been there a number of times now, scouting Shedeur Sanders, talking to Shedeur Sanders in prime. And if they are in a position, obviously, I think that's the quarterback that they would go after. Looking at this class, because I think Shedeur Sanders has solidified himself as the number one quarterback in next year's draft class. So my first thought in hearing this is it makes sense from this standpoint. Not that, they've kept Daniel Jones in there for a long period of time this season. And I do believe they honestly feel like he gives them the best chance to win. I think this move is, as much as it's about contractually protecting themselves from Daniel Jones getting injured and potentially being on the hook for whatever else would be guaranteed under his contract in those 2025, 2026 seasons. So there's an element of that, I believe, that's at play here. And that's one of the reasons why you've got to be able to it's actually $12 million of his 2025 salary would be guaranteed on the fifth league day of 2025. So essentially, if he couldn't pass a physical at that point, they'd be on the hook for another $12 million. So I think there's something to do with that. I also think it's something to do with whether or not we want to say tanking, whatever. I'm not going to use that phrase.
That's what it sounds like.
Well, because
you're taking him out because
like
Drew Lock is not the answer. So you don't want him to get hurt.
And
you're punting on the season.
And Adam Schefter is reporting that instead of, because Drew Lock is the backup, they're going to go with Tommy DeVito. He's going to be the starter. So they're jumping the third stringer as the starter now.
Well, there you go. So that's as blatant as it gets for them saying, we're tanking. We want Shedeur Sanders. Yes. We've got 2 wins. Or we're going to try to solidify ourselves as a 2-15 football team.
Yeah.
And our fan base loves DeVito, so let's play him instead of the backup.
Hey, the Pison's back, Pally. How we doing? The only tough part about this is not what every other player and Brian Daboll and his staff signed up for. You know what I'm saying? Like, this goes on their resume. This goes on, like, every one of these players and Tommy DeVito's going to give it his best shot. He won some football games. He played good at times. But this is about seeing what they have in him, potentially as a backup in the future, as opposed to probably, saying, hey, we feel like it gives us the best shot to win. If that was the case, they would have put Tommy DeVito in earlier this season. They wouldn't have waited till this point to do it.
So Ian Rappaport is now saying that one determining factor as the Giants plot a path moving forward is that Drew Lock was injured for much of the preseason while Coach Brian Daboll has seen Tommy DeVito have success in his system. That should inform the decision going forward, despite Locke being the backup. So if you knew that and he was injured in the preseason, then why wasn't DeVito the backup the entire time?
The entire season, exactly. It doesn't make logical sense. No. I mean, they're trying to cover themselves. This is what I don't get about Ian. This is what I don't get about Ian Rappaport putting this out there. He works for the NFL. Like, the NFL is against tanking. It's against all these other things, supposedly, that we put out there. And so this is a blatant example of that. And look, I'm not faulting the Giants for doing it, because if they feel like their future is in Shedeur Sanders, then they're going to try to do everything they can to position themselves to make that selection, make that pick. And so if you could have the number 1 overall pick, there you go. You get your pick. He's your guy. Maybe you'd throw Cam Ward or Carson Beck. They'll look at those other 2 quarterbacks too in this class. But to me, Shedeur solidified himself. And like I said, I was just there. I know Joe Schoen was down on the sidelines. I saw him. So I know exactly how this is working out right now. It's crazy to me that, Ian Rappaport, who, again, is employed by the NFL, is using all of this, even though we all know what the reality is of the situation.
I think Dayball's going to be back.
Well, he should be if they're going to put him in this position.
Because I'm looking at it thinking, Belichick, obviously with his history, makes a ton of sense for him. But if this is the move that they're making, like this feels like it. And we talked to Albert Breer about it, and he said that, the Giants ownership, like they're embarrassed at all the turnover when it comes to coaches that they've had over the past several years. Like, I wonder if they're looking at this going, listen, you're going to be back. Joe Shane's going to be back. We're going to give you guys a chance to get the quarterback you want. I mean, Brian Daboll inherited Daniel Jones.
Right.
And so maybe that's the thought when it comes to, being out there and scouting Shedeur Sanders.
The other thing, too, and this is the last thing I'll say on this matter is, they decided to move on from Saquon Barkley. We saw how that played out. That wasn't Brian Daboll's decision. So if that's, and by the way, I'm not saying that Saquon would have an apples to apples comparison of or season that he's having in Philly. But to sit there and think that he wouldn't help out this offense, he wouldn't add another dimension or element, whether it's, running the football or in the passing game as a running back in a mismatch. I mean, come on. So you moved on from Saquon. You strapped your coaching staff, your team with Daniel Jones. You kind of knew what you had in that. The roster's still not to a point where it's going to be as effective as I think a year from now, where you continue to build up the offensive line and the depth on that offensive line and continue to provide the quarterback there some playmakers. But how are you going to move on from the guy when he took you to the playoffs, in year one? I think this is the sort of decision that if you make it as an organization, you can't then, do something crazy and fire your coach and, have this whole roster upheaval when a lot of these guys didn't sign up for this. They've been trying to fight their tails off. You're the ones that kind of put them in the position in the first place.
I totally agree. Listen, the offense went through Saquon Barkley. That's what we do know. Whether his numbers would have been the same, whether his offensive line is the same, the team is, doesn't matter. Everybody wants to make the argument, just because they didn't keep Saquon doesn't mean that Saquon would have had that. The offense went through Saquon Barkley in New York, just like it's now going through Saquon Barkley in Philadelphia. So don't act as though we didn't have that answer to begin with. So if you're going to hold Daboll accountable for the success and the failures of what this team is having, you can't sit there and take away his main form of having offense and think that he's going to have success. It just doesn't work that way. Now, the question becomes, how damning will that quote continue to be? We don't pay Daniel Jones all that money to hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley. To me, you put your own, here is the nail, here is the hammer. If this season doesn't work, as a GM, I might be looking for a new job. Now, that might be the proper response to all of this. Not getting a new head coach, but getting a GM that can work with the head coach the way that they need to work together in a harmonious manner, where you're not getting rid of the engine to the vehicle that is our offense. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Just because you paid him all that money doesn't mean you can't pay Saquon Barkley what his market value is. Why would you use that as your reasoning? Because now all you did was tell the whole entire world, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Saquon Barkley only has 62 yards rushing less than the entire Giants team. What a disaster. Well, hey, listen, Daniel Jones got paid, so there's that. And Tommy DeVito is back. So everybody rejoice.